Coming up in Shadowcast episode 2, Igor Fraga trains with the McLaren Applied Technologies team. We give you a beginner's guide to sim racing and ask shadow racer Olli Pahkala how to set up a car. Meanwhile, Lando Norris races Paul Ricard in real life and in game, and today I have Rudy Van Buren joining us here in the studio. Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Shadowcast, the monthly Shadow Project show where we get you up to speed with sim racing. Today I'm joined by Rudy Van Buren. Hello, thank you so much for coming by to chat to me.
Thanks for having me.
So how has life been since you won the world's fastest gamer contest?
It's been turned upside down. I was working as a graphic designer and a sales manager, a combined job, just a 9 to 5 kind of thing, 5 days a week, and all of a sudden I'm traveling the world, doing anything racing related that I want. So life changing, but best change ever.
That's insane to go from like a desk job to now going all over the world to do like various races. That's really, really cool. Can you talk some more about that transition?
A little bit over 60 flights a year, different continents, various things, real life cars, sim. So it's a really big change, and I needed some time to adapt to it.
Of course,
but I would never want to go back to the desk job.
100%. Okay, so what is next for you then? What's on the horizon?
Well, obviously all the F1 sim testing, sim racing, everything goes on, but there's always been the big dream to make the real life racing debut. I've been working on that ever since winning World's Fastest Gamer in the end of 2017, and actually a few weeks ago at my first test in the Porsche Super Cup in Silverstone.
Wow.
And we're still working hard to get the plan together, but it will be 2020 before that really becomes a full season. Awesome. And for now we're just looking at making some guest appearances this year, but it's looking bright, it's looking good, so just keep hammering at it. And there's not been a week until now where I'd say I've not made progress. So as long as that line's still going up, I'll keep fighting to keep the dream alive. Totally,
yeah, no, it sounds like you're making really, really good progress towards that, so fingers crossed for you. So it's a good thing you're so handy behind the wheel, because in a minute we do have the very first Shadowcast hotlap challenge. You ready?
Born ready.
But now, if you like the sound of Rudy's jet-set lifestyle but haven't so much as wrestled with a force feedback wheel before, then Phil's first instalment of our sim racing school is the one for you.
Do you want to get into sim racing? From gear to games, we've got everything you need to know right here to get you started. Sim Racing School 101, class in session. Every great journey begins with one step, and the first step to being a great sim racer is investing in a force feedback wheel and pedals. There are 2 really important reasons you'll want to do this, even if you're already good at playing racing games with a gamepad. The first is that the kind of information force feedback gives you through a great racing wheel like the Logitech G920 is much more detailed than a pad could ever give you. It can tell you when the back end's starting to step out to the left by snapping the steering over to the right. It can let you know how rough the road surface is and where the bumps are by sending jolts into your hands. And it can shake your fillings loose when you get out too wide on the rumble strips. These are precise points of tactile information that will help make you a better driver, and a gamepad just can't give them to you. Secondly, you can perform inputs with a wheel and pedals that no other control method can give you. When you steer with an analog stick, most of the time you're making stabs at the steering wheel, telling the car to engage maximum lock and then go straight back to center position. It's the game itself smoothing out those input commands rather than you as the driver. With a wheel, it's totally different. You have one-to-one control of the car, so you're able to maintain a steady steering lock through a corner and then straighten out. Or push hard on the brakes when you hit the marker, then lift off gradually to avoid locking up as you reach the apex. This is the difference between playing a game and practicing a simulator. It's about getting as close to reality as possible. Now that you've invested in some hardware, it's time to cast your eyes over to software. Sim racers are spoiled for choice more than ever today, with great titles like Forza Motorsport 7, R-Factor 2, and more, all offering a huge number of cars, tracks, and online competitions. In truth, there's no right answer. They're all great, and they'll all teach you skills that transfer to each other. The important thing is to practice them. Nobody ever loaded up a racing sim and drove a flawless lap first time. It takes a while to refine your force feedback settings, learn the handling behaviour and the track, and then start to get your head around the car setup. It's always worth searching online or in Steam community guides to get the best settings for your wheel. Try a few out and see how they feel. As exciting as races are, it's always best to learn the track in solo practice sessions where you can run endless laps without worrying about collisions, fuel or tyre wear. Turn these two off in the settings menu and then head out on the track. At first, you'll just want to focus on staying on the track, so take it slow and get used to the car's behaviour as it shifts its weight around. Once you're stringing a few clean laps together, you can build up speed and focus on learning the braking points for each corner. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither were sim racing skills. Don't be disheartened if it doesn't come easily. Like with any skill in life, it's all about practice, so find a way to keep it light and fun for yourself. When you first start racing against other people, don't worry about the results, they'll come in time. For now, just enjoy being on track with other people and get used to the way a race usually goes down. At the end of the day, it's all about having fun, isn't it? By now, you've got your basic sim racing rig set up and ready whenever you need it. Now it's time to look at the very best racers out there and soak up a bit of knowledge from them. There's a lot you can pick up from the esports broadcasts from your favourite sims. Watching hot laps will show the quickest racing lines around each circuit and where to brake for each turn. You can also see which gear the fastest drivers select for those turns and how quickly they downshift in the braking zone and then upshift again on corner exit. What you'll also see when you watch pro sim racers compete is racecraft. Sim racing is not bumper cars. It doesn't look like those 3-lap destruction derbies in casual arcade racing games. Drivers here give each other room, respect everyone on the track and, by and large, play by the rules. That means no weaving ahead of a driver when they're lining up to overtake, and certainly no ramming. Like everything else in sim racing, it's about getting as close to reality as possible. Behave like you would on the real track and you'll do fine in online competitions. So what's next? Well, once you feel comfortable with your racing sim's handling model and you know a handful of tracks better than your loved one's face, it's time to start getting involved with a few races. Remember to keep it clean and resist the temptation to make mad lunges down the inside that will likely ruin everyone's race. You won't make many friends that way, and you won't learn much about racing either. A lot of sim racers take their hardware setup further by introducing multi-monitor setup so they get that immersive field of view, and getting a race seat to put them in a natural driving position. These investments won't make you quicker if you're a beginner, but later down the line they'll bring a new sense of excitement to practice and blur the line even more between reality and sim. So there we have it, 4 pointers that will help begin your journey into sim racing. Invest in a good wheel, get out on track in your sim of choice and dial in the settings with a bit of help from the internet, then log some serious practice laps before checking out the very best to see what you can learn from them and apply to your own racing. Finally, consider expanding your rig a bit to increase immersion and come back for more sim racing school vids that will hone your skills.
Thanks, Phil. So there you go. No excuses now. With a good racing wheel, a lot of passion and, not gonna lie, quite a bit of practice indeed, you could be competing with the very best drivers in sim racing. Drivers like Shadow's own Igor, who we caught up with as he experienced McLaren's DNA driver program for up-and-coming racing talent.
The McLaren Technology Centre is used to entertaining top motorsport talent and putting those individuals through rigorous testing. With world-class simulator facilities you'd be hard-pushed to find anywhere else in the world, it's a base for bleeding-edge performance testing. And today, 2018 Shadow Project champion Igor Fraga is the one going through those tests. One of Igor's little perks of being the reigning Shadow champ is access to the McLaren DNA Driver Development Programme, where the leading voices in human performance, fitness and nutrition work with the experts down in the simulation room to give young drivers a one-of-a-kind training experience. We caught up with Igor as he was already deep in the DNA experience. And he's been quite a busy man since lifting that Shadow trophy in 2018.
Since winning the Shadow project, I've been involved in some activities. We went for the Indy 500, we did a show event there against Fernando Alonso's esports team. I'm here on the McLaren Technology Center doing some test sessions on the simulator, helping them develop for the DNA program. So have been involved with quite interesting stuff. I'm competing in the Formula Regional European Championship. It's my first experience here in Europe racing against great drivers in like many very nice circuits, which is like totally new for me. The car has been totally new, the tracks as well, so it's been a very nice experience and learning for me this year.
And for Igor, being here at McLaren's HQ is kind of a big deal.
Since when I was little, I have a dream to be like an F1 driver, and being close to like this environment, it makes me feel very kind of satisfied, and I really want more. So it's something that keeps motivating me to push even more. The one thing that I was very surprised is it's about their passion. They are very open to what they kind of don't know and finding this very interesting and try to seek the unknown so they can develop their car even more, I think. So it was something that very surprised me, to be honest.
We also caught up with some of the experts behind the DNA driver program and asked them exactly what kind of tests Igor's being put through. Mark Williams has 4 decades of experience in Formula 1 as an engineer, and in that time he worked alongside great drivers like Mika Häkkinen and Lewis Hamilton. He knows a thing or two about what it takes to make it in racing.
Today, Igor is helping us out with our DNA performance program. So what we're doing here is looking at how we can introduce physics so people can understand about racing cars and how the performance increases as you move up the formulae. And what, in simple terms, is the physics behind that level of improvement? That'll give them a better understanding and hopefully accelerate their training.
So what does Mark think all great race drivers have in common?
I think their personalities are all very different. They're all quite unique, but they've all got a massive desire to succeed, a massive desire to win. I mean, Mika's famous phrase was always maximum attack. And he was. He never lifted off. He was flat out all the time. And they all are.
Fantastic to hear from the man behind Mika's maximum attack campaigns all those years ago. Igor's in good company. Clayton Green is human performance manager at McLaren, and he's putting Igor through his paces this week. He previously worked as Lewis Hamilton's personal trainer.
I work with people to improve their performance rather than necessarily focusing purely on the technology that they interact with and improving the performance of the technology. So when you go out on a racetrack in the real world, there's so many variables that are changing, things like the grip of the circuit, the track temperature. It's really difficult to isolate exactly what the driver has done to contribute to your overall lap time performance. What we're doing is we're using our simulators that we've got here in the building to effectively build like a driving laboratory where we can isolate and control all these different variables and really start to dial in on what the driver is actually doing, the skills that they employ, the braking, the throttle control, the steering angle, the small things that build up corner after corner to give you your final lap time. And we're able to measure them and assess them objectively, compare this set of data with that of a elite level or gold standard driver, F1 drivers of the past, to basically say to you, well, you're at this level of skill, and at the very top level, this is where you'd need to be, and these are the crucial differences. It might be steering or braking performance or whatever it is, but be able to call it out and then use the simulator in particular as a tool to train and improve those performance aspects and improve the overall performance of the drivers.
And from one man with a pretty excellent record of extracting the most from race drivers to another. That's Mike Collier. He's head of human performance at McLaren, and he and 2009 F1 champion Jenson Button go way back to the driver's Honda days, where Collier acted as his personal trainer. And he's been working with Igor this week.
And so what's been really quite interesting is trying to gauge his level of understanding of the data and how he interprets that, and then also how he uses that data to optimize his performance. And so we've been playing around with different things, downforce being one of them, tyre grip being another, so that almost on the two ends, if you have huge amounts of downforce, what does that do to the car and how do you feel and how do you interpret that you take that off, you go the other way, and actually by feeling those two extremes, where do you feel is the optimal for you? Once you understand that, you can then start to see the differences in the data, and then you can then hopefully be able to communicate that back in a way that the engineer is going to be able to dial that up or dial that down to maximize performance.
For Igor and young racers like him, the DNA program offers that all-important edge on the competition. It's a chance to figure out the intricacies of a race car in changing conditions without actually having to get out on the track. Igor will be taking that edge not just to his sim racing competitions, but to Real Motorsport Series 2. He's competing in the Formula Regional European Championships in 2019, and he'll be glad of all that time in the sim at MTC as he does. Best of luck, Igor. Knock 'em dead. Back to you, Shay.
Igor was definitely enjoying himself being that close to Senna's old cars, wasn't he? Honestly, who can blame him? Now it's time for Shadow Racer Olli Pahkala to give you his super secret sauce for setting up your car for sim racing. If your use of the gear ratio screen is based more on luck than judgment, or really, truly, honestly, you don't know what a rear wishbone is, Olli's here to sort you out. I definitely know what a rear wishbone is. Definitely.
Sup guys, it's Olli here from McLaren Shadow team. Today we're gonna check out some basics on how to build up a car setup for a race for you. When you start preparing for a race on a new track or even with the new car, the first thing what you want to have is a baseline setup. Usually you can find good baselines through the internet. Just Google it or go to your games community and check what's available from there. Like for example, iRacing, rFactor 2, F1, everything. Everywhere is a lot of baseline setup, so the community loves to share. That's what I do usually when I just want to have fun and do a quick setup work. I get some of my friends setups and work from there on. So that's a good way to start off with and get a baseline. Or if you don't get a baseline from anywhere, then you need to start working on it on your own. So you open up your setup sheet, and what you want to have is a bit of an understeery car to start off with. So you don't want to have an oversteery car when you go out on a track for your first time, right? Just because when you oversteer, you can't really manage the car, and then just like you don't learn the track. With the understeer, you just brake earlier and you manage to go corners quite smoothly. For the understeery baseline setup, what you want to have is a downforce which accumulates or creates understeer. So what it means is that you want to have less downforce on the front and more downforce on the rear. So basically you can do this with wings or more rake, lift the front height, ride height, stuff like that. Then the second thing what you want to have is a suspensions adjusted properly. And if it's a slow speed track, then you most likely have like a mid to low range on front suspension, springs, ARBs, damping obviously, and then stiffer on the rear. And if you're on a high speed track, then you want to have a stiffer front suspension and a loose on the rear, just to make it work. Around the tire pressures, depending on the track, obviously, again with the slow speed tracks, you want to have less, maybe like 20-30% above the minimum tire pressures, and on the high speed tracks you want to have more tire pressures because the loads are much higher. And then for the gearing, just obviously slow speed, you have a shorter gearing, high speed track, higher gearing. It's quite basic. And then you fill up your tank for 5 to 8 laps of fuel. So then after you got a baseline one way or another, you go out on the track and start learning the track, obviously, adapting to the track and learning the car, how does it behave. And then starts the most important thing of building a setup. You need to start problem solving, and it might take from hour to 2 to couple evenings, depending on how fast you want to get and when you're satisfied on your car. But right, it's problem solving mainly. What it means is that, okay, you go through a high-speed right-hander corner and you get an oversteer. So the first thing is that you need to detect that, okay, I have an issue here. Then the next thing is that, okay, you go back to the pits and then you start thinking how I'm gonna solve this. So that's the main thing when building a setup is you need to detect what's wrong and how can I fix it. One good tip is that when you start this problem solving, you separate high speed corners to slow speed corners, right? because on the high speeds it's mainly aerodynamics. Well, obviously the aerodynamics are the most important thing for the high speed corners, and then on the slow speeds you're mainly playing on mechanical grip, which means that you're playing on with the suspension more, tire pressures, whatnot. So those are the two things, and that's a major difference. Everything obviously affects on everything when you change something for a setup, but that's like the big how you can start off with. Then you start work from there on, like you get an oversteer on high speed, you add rear downforce or reduce front downforce, and you should be good to go again. So you've done your couple of evenings or hours to building up a baseline setup. Then you go and you have to separate quali and a race setup, right? So on the quali setup, you want to have more grip, obviously, and you can have, because it's about one lap or a couple laps of hot lap, you can put more load on the tires. So you want to make sure that you use all the grip available for the fastest lap, what you can do, right? So you start lowering the tire temps. You increase the front downforce and you reduce the rear downforce for increased top speeds and better roll through the corners, and you build from there on. And remember to put the 1 lap or 2 laps of fuel, because you save on weight, and with that you save on time. And then you need to work on a race setup. And during the initial tryouts, when you're building a baseline setup, is that you probably gonna check how much fuel are you consuming per lap. So you're preparing for a race. So obviously you know how many laps you're gonna do. Just calculate how much fuel do you need. Add the fuel. Check that your ride heights are within the minima, and you wanna build your race setup a little bit maybe more understeer, depending on the sim, but usually it's worth of building the race setup is a bit more understeer, because it's usually the rear tires which start heating up if you really push in the car and you start losing the traction. And when you lose the traction and grip on the rear, it means that you start oversteering. So the better way is to build the race setup a bit more understeering, so your car doesn't make any sudden movements, and over the course of the race, when your tires degrade, you will still have the smoothness, and actually you will get a better turn-ins, rather than if you build an oversteer race setup, then after halfway of the race you're gonna struggle. So that's the way I do it. Hope you liked it. See you guys on track.
Thanks, Olli. Goodbye default setups, hello there purple sectors. Speaking of which, we recently got the chance to catch up with 19-year-old McLaren driver Lando Norris, midway through his first season in F1. Fresh from his practice lap at Paul Ricard, Lando sat down with the new Codemasters F1 2019 and tried to beat his best IRL practice time. How close does the game feel to real life? Let's find out.
19-year-old Lando Norris is currently enjoying his first season in Formula 1 for McLaren, and he's already proving to be pretty fast indeed. We caught up with him right after the French Grand Prix to talk a bit about sim racing, getting competitive with his teammate Carlos Sainz, and with the Circuit de Paul Ricard still fresh in his mind, he also gave us a tour of the lap in the new F1 2019 video game from Codemasters. As it happens, racing on the virtual track is something Lando's grown up with.
As far back as I can remember, I must have been 4 years old, and my dad used to have Gran Turismo 3 on the PlayStation 2, and that was the first time I started playing a racing game, really any type of game. I just got an F1 2019, Codemasters very kindly gave me like the pre-release version. So I've been doing a bit of F1, a bit of F2 as well, as that's the new edition. And so far it's been pretty fun.
Outside of racing for fun and games, Lando's been training in the McLaren simulator with Carlos Sainz, an activity that obviously brings out the competitive nature of both drivers.
It's actually the first time we properly have started going against each other in driving. I'm quickest, obviously, no question. If I didn't have someone like Carlos, someone that's good on the simulator sim, it'd be not as much of a positive for myself or the whole team. A lot of the things we do on the simulator correlate to real life, because you are able to pick up on these places where as a driver you're not as strong and already start working on them before you've even driven the track.
So, as a driver with priors in sim racing, what does Lando make of the Shadow project as it enters its second season?
The amount of people who entered last year was pretty insane, and it's only going to grow this year. So there's a lot of people in the world who are very good drivers. More and more often nowadays, you have drivers who can go from a simulator into a real car and show that the skills correlate very well. People like Rudy, people like Igor have showed that you can do this kind of thing, and I think there's plenty more people out there, so a lot of people have a chance of winning it and going on to maybe driving a real car.
Just as a shark dies if it stops swimming, there's only so long he can keep a race driver from sitting still before he starts itching for the steering wheel. We put Lando in his current car in F1 2019 and asked for a tour of the circuit de Paul Ricard. And as you'll see, the line between sim and reality is pretty thin indeed.
Here we are in Paul Ricard for my virtual lap in the MCL 34, the current Formula 1 car. Into 8th gear before turn 1, into quite a quick combination. Turn 1, turn 2, 5th gear, medium speed, quick flick into the right-hander, making sure you don't run too wide on the exit or damage the car. Down into turn 3, the first complex, very quick combination of right, left, right, all of the curb. Down to 3rd gear, staying in 3rd gear for the hairpin, not running too wide onto the big sausage curbs before a long straight. Make sure you get a nice clean exit, don't run too wide, as it's an easy time to lose, an easy place to lose or gain time. Down into the mid-chicane, making sure you don't want to lock up the front left into the first part. Again, you've got a good long exit coming up, so stop the car, rotate, nice clean exit. Especially because it's uphill, you don't want to be losing time, as you can quite easily lose 1, 2, 3 tenths maybe. Flat out right hand to into the best corner of the track. Very small brake, down maybe 4 gears, maybe 3. Long right hander, but very quick in a current Formula 1 car, pulling 4 or 5G. To turn 12, a long left, very easy to lock up the front left tyre. Round turn 13, flat out into the second to last. Killer for the front right tyre. Continues to go left, tightens up, don't want too wide, don't want to compromise your run out of the last corner. Again, don't spin up the wheels, nice clean exit, straight as possible, and crossing the line.
Amazing driving both on and off the track there. Thanks Lando, and good luck with the rest of the season.
Very impressive stuff there from Lando. Rudy's going to get a chance to show his prowess in a minute, but first we've got some questions for you from social media. So, @Sirchester on Instagram says, just turned 38, am I too old to start as a gamer and possibly become a shadow driver?
Never too old to start. 38, you're a bit late, and you probably have more difficulties adapting to the whole PC console thing. But if you've got a dream, chase it.
Absolutely, and like 38 is never too old to pick up games. Like, gaming is one of the most beautiful art forms on the planet, so yeah, never too old. So @GT says, what's your favourite sim software and why?
R-Factor 2, definitely. Just one simple reason, I think the physics of the game were just the most realistic and compare the best to the real life environment.
Awesome, sweet. @Alexis Trust on Twitter says, how has your life changed since winning World's Fastest Gamer a couple of years ago?
180 degrees turnaround. As said before, I was one of the guys who was just stuck at a desk from 9 to 5 doing a job which was okay, but nothing special. Just paid the bills and you got through the week with it. And now I get to do what I love.
Yeah, no, it's always nice to like chase your passion and you obviously enjoy it.
It took me 26 years to get to the point, but now I can loudly speak out. I'm now doing what I love.
Amazing. @Tono Camillo on Instagram says, why you is so beautiful?
Sorry, can you repeat that one? I don't even understand it.
I'm reading that as is.
Can I read it so I understand it? Is this the last one?
No, literally.
I is so beautiful thanks to parents.
So there you have it. If you have a burning question you absolutely need answering in the next edition of Shadowcast, get in touch with us by leaving a comment here on YouTube or go to @McLaren Shadow on Insta and Twitter. So now it's time for our first ever Shadowcast Hot Lap Challenge.
The Shadowcast Hot Lap Challenge brings together two icons of British motorsport, Silverstone and the McLaren 720S GT3. Challengers will have 5 practice laps before putting the hammer down and giving it all they've got over one timed lap in R-Factor 2. But who'll come away with the quickest lap and the bragging rights?
You ready? You ready to see how you did? Yeah?
We'll find out.
You don't look too confident. No, I'm sure you did absolutely fine. Right, so talk me through it.
So, getting onto the start finish of Silverstone, up to 5th gear. Go down to 4th for the first corner.
Okay.
Quite tricky with the balance of the car.
Yeah.
This part was actually all right. Oh, pretty
smooth.
Yeah, pretty smooth up to this point. Now another hard braking zone. 90-degree left-hander. Double apex, as we call it. So we touched it again here.
Nice.
Lining up for the 180-degree right. This is actually where I went wrong a little bit. There you go.
Yeah.
Add more. Not as smooth as you'd like it to see.
It's fine. You got it back. You brought it on back. It's all good. It's fine. You can pretend like it didn't happen.
This is the old start finish. Fast entry. Taking a lot of curbs on all sides. Onto hanger straight.
Another straight, nice and clean.
Yeah. So I missed the apex a little bit here. 90-degree left. And then 180-degree right. You define it as 2 corners, but you take it as one. And that's a lap around Silverstone, which is definitely not as smooth as I wanted it to be.
Wow.
But someone's got to take the honour of being the first.
I was going to say,
there
somebody had to go first for our very first Shadowcast Hot Lap Challenge. How do you think you did timing-wise?
I think there's quite a bit in there.
Yeah.
You've seen the mistakes, but someone's got to put the banker down.
It's fine.
I need to have an excuse to be back later in the year after all the guys can practice at home and try to beat it.
Those are kind of fighting words. I do like that energy.
Fighting words, drive excuses.
I mean, the most important thing is you will be at the top of the leaderboard, which is the most important thing. So.
For now, I will be.
There's your time, 1:59.1. How is that? You look a bit disappointed.
Like I said, there's a few mistakes, there's a few tenths in there, but I think that's a driver excuse thing as well. You can always improve. You get one lap at it. If you nail it, you're on top. If you make a few mistakes, you'll get this. But I need an excuse to be back later in the year as well. So.
Exactly, and plus you need to make it easy for everybody else. You can smash the score again. Fighting words, I love it. So now it's time for this month's competition. For your chance to win a McLaren VIP experience at
Spa Francorchamps.
Yeah, I can't say that. Spa Francorchamps.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Spa
Francorchamps. So now it's time for this month's competition. For your chance to win a McLaren VIP experience at Spa Francorchamps, Rudy here has set us a very special challenge.
Yes, earlier on we saw Lando posting a solid hot lap of 1:33.1 around Paul Ricard. That's actually 2 seconds faster than his actual F1 race. But can you beat it?
See, honestly, I don't think anyone's winning that prize. So, prove me wrong. If you can get within 2 seconds of Lando's time, post a screen grab to our Twitter at McLaren Shadow. For full details and T's and C's, check out the description below. So, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for coming to see me, Rudy.
Thanks for having me.
No, it's been awesome, and hopefully we'll get you back in to see if you can beat the score once other people have had a tack at it.
I'll make sure I will.
Love that energy. We've got loads more from the McLaren Shadow drivers and the wider world of sim racing in the next episode of Shadowcast. So make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to us here on YouTube, hitting that bell to turn on notifications, and you can follow the very latest news from us as it happens by following at McLaren Shadow on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Catch you next time. For your chance to win a McLaren... Oh, that's going to keep happening.